No theme music today. Why? Because I already videoed this devotional once already, only to find out that it wasn't recording the whole time that I was talking. And how annoyed does that make me? Off the charts! But I'm going to forget that that happened and be as happy and as energetic as I was the first time that I made this video. Deep breath. Welcome to Better News Daily once again. Today we are in a book of the Bible that I'm pretty sure you haven't spent much time reading. And don't feel bad about that. Neither have I. And I know this because of statistics. The popular website Bible Gateway, which is the most used source online to read the Bible, they posted the list of the 10 least popular books of the Bible, meaning the ones that had the least amount of traffic on their website. And number 1 on their list was Obadiah. Now, here on Better News Daily, we make it our goal to try and find something that we can chew on in every book of the Bible and then take that thought with us throughout the rest of the day. So, least popular book of the Bible, Obadiah, challenge accepted. Now, let's do a little bit of background on the book, and then we're going to zero in on the specific thing that I want to focus on for today. So, first of all, the book is short. Very short. So you can see here in my Bible, it's one chapter, and it takes up just barely more than a page. It's only 21 verses. So there's not a lot of content here in the book of Obadiah. Obadiah's message from God is about the nation of Edom. God is angry with the nation of Edom. He is going to wipe them out completely, and then the people of Israel are going to reign in God's kingdom. That's basically the message of Obadiah in just a sentence. So, what's the deal with Edom? Who are they? Rewind with me in the Bible back to the book of Genesis. This is in chapter 25. Do you remember this story? Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is thus, why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger." And who is this referring to? Jacob and Esau, right? Rebekah has twins, and because of an unhealthy family dynamic, the two brothers grow up in hostility with each other. Jacob cheats Esau out of his birthright, and then he has to flee from home for fear of Esau's anger. It goes on like this for years. And despite the fact that Jacob and Esau themselves eventually do make up with each other, their descendants continue to replay this tense relationship that the brothers had early in their lives. So the nation that comes from Jacob is called Israel. And can you guess which nation comes from Esau? Edom. There we go. And these two nations did not get along. It was Family Feud without the funny survey answers, right? This goes all throughout the Old Testament. The Edomites refused safe passage through their land to the Israelites when they came up out of Egypt. And then when the Israelites get into the promised land, they continue to go to war with the Edomites. It's just all over the Old Testament. So, okay, the Edomites have a history of nasty behavior towards the Israelites. And by the time we get to Obadiah, we finally have the moment where God is going to pronounce final judgment on the people of Edom. But here's what I want you to catch. There's a reason why God is now in Obadiah so angry that he's committed to wipe Edom away entirely. But the reason is not what you would expect. This is verse 10. "Because of the violence against your brother Jacob, you, Edom, will be covered with shame. You will be destroyed forever." Okay, so the Edomites are responsible for violence against the Israelites. That's why God is angry with them. Well, Let's keep reading. God is going to explain just what exactly the Edomites are guilty of. On the day you stood aloof, while strangers carried off his wealth and foreigners entered his gates and cast lots for Jerusalem, you were like one of them. So this verse is talking about when the Babylonians came in and raided Jerusalem and took the people of Judah into captivity. And so the violence that God accuses the Edomites of is the violence of the Babylonians. When Jerusalem was raided, you just stood aloof. And God says, for that, you are just as guilty as the Babylonians. Whoa. I don't often use The Message, but Eugene Peterson's vivid paraphrase of this verse and the next couple really brings this to life. On that day, you stood there and didn't do anything. Strangers took your brother's army into exile. Godless foreigners invaded and pillaged Jerusalem. You stood there and watched. You were as bad as they were. You shouldn't have gloated over your brother when he was down and out. You shouldn't have laughed and joked at Judah's sons when they were face down in the mud. You shouldn't have talked so big when everything was so bad. You shouldn't have taken advantage of my people when their lives had fallen apart. You, of all people, should not have been amused by their troubles, their wrecked nation. There's this thing today called bystander culture. Have you heard of this? So it's when people see something bad happening and they pull out their phones to video it. Or when injustice or corruption or abuse is happening in a community or in an organization and people don't say or do anything to stop it. Friends, the book of Obadiah is a stark warning to bystanders. Just because you don't participate in the action doesn't mean that you won't be held accountable for it. I have a perfect story for this. When I was in 6th or 7th grade, I got sent to the principal's office. I know, scandal. Now, this was a new experience for me. I rarely got in trouble in schools. Some might call that being well behaved. Others might call that being a teacher's pet. Potato, potato. Now, why was I sent to the principal's office, you might ask? Well, it was because a kid in my class got beat up during recess. Now, I know what you're thinking. Did you punch a child, Pastor Jordan? No, I didn't. And I kept reminding the principal of this very fact while I was in his office. It was another kid in my class who did it, and he happened to be in the principal's office with me. We'll call him Drew, because that was his name. I kept telling the principal, Drew beat the kid up. It wasn't me. I was just watching. Why am I getting punished the same as the actual bully? In fact, why am I getting punished at all? I didn't do anything. Exactly. I didn't do anything. The Bible is littered with examples of people who stood by and did nothing to stop something that was wrong. And their inaction had huge consequences. So think of like Abraham. Sarah mistreats Hagar. And what does Abraham do? He tells Sarah to deal with it herself. And what happens? Hagar has to flee into the desert, nearly killing herself. Eli has 2 sons who are total punks. And Eli doesn't do anything to stop their abuse of their priestly position. And what happens? Well, his 2 sons foolishly lead the Israelites into battle with the Ark of the Covenant, and they lose the Ark of the Covenant. And Eli, as a result of all of this, ends up dying. You have Jacob, back to him again. He has 12 sons, and if you remember the story, the 10 oldest brothers do not like their younger brother, Joseph. Joseph keeps going around and telling them about this dream that he had where they are going to bow down to him, and they are ticked. And what does Jacob do about this? Genesis 37, verse 11. His brothers were jealous of him, But his father kept the matter in mind. And because Jacob only kept the matter in mind and did nothing more, what happened? His favorite son was almost killed and sent into slavery away from home. The Bible is full of examples of marriages crumbling and lives being ruined, not as a result of something someone did, but as the result of something they didn't do. We were in James last week, where we could also read this verse: whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. Look, I don't want to make the tiny book of Obadiah be about something that it isn't. The book is mainly about God's judgment and his covenant faithfulness. But I wanted to zero in on this concept because I think it's so important for us today. There are many ways where we can see wrong and yet do nothing to stop it. And so I ask you, are you, intentionally or unintentionally, being a bystander? Is there gossip about another person that you yourself aren't creating or spreading, but that you're more than happy to listen to? Have you seen something in your workplace that isn't appropriate or above board, but you don't want to risk your job by saying anything? Are there systemic issues in your community that, you're passionate about when you're in conversation or on social media, but that you haven't actually done anything to help to remedy? And maybe to really match this to the accusation against the Edomites, think of a person or a group of people that you would classify as your enemy. You don't see eye to eye, and this has deep roots in your life. What would you do if that person or that group was in trouble? Would you jump in and help them, or would you stand aloof and think to yourself, serves them right? I think if we really thought about it, the actions, or rather the inaction of the Edomites, hits a lot closer to home than we might want to admit. Do you remember the parable of the Good Samaritan? So the story starts when someone asks Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" And then Jesus, instead of answering that question, just tells a parable about what a good neighbor looks like. A good neighbor doesn't decide who he'll be a neighbor to. A good neighbor just stands up and helps anyone in need, Jew or Samaritan, family or stranger, friend or enemy. And we as disciples of Jesus are called to be good neighbors to all who are around us. And that means that we don't just stand by when the vulnerable are targeted. That's my thought for you today. I would spin the randomizer wheel, but I already did. So it showed the first time around Ephesians, so that is where we're going to go tomorrow when I am going to triple check that my video is recording. Ha ha ha, still not funny. All right, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.